Hey guys, I'm back with another video. I've gone back and forth for the last couple of days quite a bit about whether or not to make this video, but it seems like this issue is a big deal, at least on my side, the conservative side of things. And so, because it seems to be such a big deal, I decided I'd give my thoughts. So, Wednesday morning, I got up and my Google News feed had a story in there from The Hill saying that the Mormon Church, let's see, it says Mormon Church announces support for same-sex marriage bill. And I was like, that's unusual. Let's take a look. And so I'll read you a few paragraphs from here. It says the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on Tuesday came out in support of a proposed law that would protect same-sex marriages. And it talks about the bill a little bit. And then it starts quoting a statement from the church. The doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints related to marriage between a man and a woman is well known and will remain unchanged, the church said in a statement. We are grateful for the continuing efforts of those who work to ensure the Respect for Marriage Act includes appropriate religious freedom protections while respecting the law and preserving the rights of our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, the statement continued. We believe this approach is the way forward. And then it stops quoting there. And I'm going to read the rest of the statement from the church because there's like one sentence left. The rest says, as we work together to preserve the principles and practices of religious freedom together with the rights of LGBTQ individuals, much can be accomplished to heal relationships and foster greater understanding. Boom. That's the end of the official statement from the church. Coming back to The Hill, it says the statement marks a shift from 2008 when the church heavily supported efforts to pass Proposition 8 in California, which required the state to recognize only marriages between a man and a woman in attempts to prevent officials from granting same-sex marriage licenses. Okay, so, and then it talks, there's several more paragraphs in the story, but it's all about the bill and there's nothing else about the church in there. So I wanted to address this because the mainstream media is running with this and saying, oh, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, they're okay with gay marriage now. Um, and that's not the way that I read it, but that is the way that media outlets are running with this. On the contrary, the church's statement says specifically, and this thing even quotes it, that the doctrine of the church is not changing, that marriage is between a man and a woman. What they're really excited about, and the reason that they support this bill is because of the religious freedom. So I decided that I went way down the rabbit hole on this thing. And in the statement from the church, by the way, it also references back to the proclamation for the family, which is really harsh language. I say harsh language. It is language that if you like gay marriage, you would find the statement extremely offensive. But it came out in the mid 90s, and it's still our doctrine today. So anyways, I went to the text of the bill, and oh my gosh, trying to read from a government website, it's rough. So in the text of the bill, the very first thing it does is it repeals a section from the Defense of Marriage Act. And so I kind of went down that rabbit hole and I was like, okay, what is the Defense of Marriage Act? And it's something that came out of 1996. Hawaii was trying to sort out whether or not they were going to allow gay marriages. And what they ended up doing was saying, no, we're not going to do gay marriages. But they were concerned that liberal courts would overturn that. And so so there was a court case in Hawaii followed by legislation in Hawaii to say no. And in the Hawaii Constitution, they said we will not recognize gay marriage. And then the United States, they did the same thing. They made a bill that says we are not going to recognize gay marriage. That's not what we're going to do. And Bill Clinton signed it into law. Okay, that's 1996. That's the Defense of Marriage Act. And there's a lot of history. I found a really good website that talked about that. In 2004, George W. Bush said that we need a constitutional amendment because there were at that time people talking about how we need to overturn that in the courts. And the only way to stop the courts from overturning something is an amendment to the Constitution, which is why I find this entire bill kind of silly, because the reason that they're pursuing it is because back in June, Roe versus Wade got overturned. And in Clarence Thomas's concurrence, so he's one of the Supreme Court judges, He was not the primary guy who said, here's why we're overturning Roe versus Wade. However, he did write up a paper saying, here's the reasoning behind it, which, as far as I can tell, he's the only one of the people who overturned Roe versus Wade who believes this. But what he said was that the court has gotten into the market of writing the law. And that's not okay. Our job is to interpret the law, to stack it up against the Constitution, and wherever the law differs from the Constitution, we cut it. We say, I'm sorry, that's not constitutional. But otherwise, if it's not, you know, against the Constitution, we follow the law. That's what we do. And so what he was saying was that not only is a right to abortion not in the Constitution, and therefore it's a states' rights thing, there's a lot of other things that we've ruled on as a Supreme Court that really are a states' rights thing. And marriage is one of those things, I think, is what the fear was. And so 1 month later, so June, we overturned Roe versus Wade. And in July, the House, the Congress passed this, what are they calling it? It's the act, you know, the Respect for Marriage Act. So they passed that in July, and now it's in front of the Senate. And Mike Lee, senator from Utah, and a handful of other Republican senators have put in an amendment into this bill saying that if you have sincerely held religious beliefs, that you don't have to perform marriages, you don't have to participate in gay marriages, you don't have to, you know, we're not going to use the compulsion of law. And this kind of scares me because that means, you know, sincerely held religious beliefs. I think what that means is that if you are running a cake shop and someone says, "Hey, I want you to make a gay marriage wedding cake," and you say, "Oh, you know what? I'm religiously against gay marriage. You know, good luck to y'all, but I'm not going to make your cake because it's a tenet of my religion." Sincerely held means that they get to look into you and say, okay, do you actually go to church? Do you actually sincerely believe this, or are you just being a hater? And you know, and if you do go to church, and we can tell this is a sincerely thing, then basically what this bill is saying is, well, okay, you're still a hater, but because you're a hater because of the Bible, we're going to let you off the hook. And that is not a permanent solution. That is a very temporary solution, and it's not going to take very long before they're saying, well, it doesn't matter why you're a hater, you still have to do what we say is right because we don't want haters. And so I'm really concerned about that. I don't know why the church came out in support of this bill, except that maybe uh, they see the writing on the wall and they want to go along to get along, which is not something that you would think that the prophets and the apostles would be okay with, but it does seem to be that way. In fact, I gave a talk in sacrament meeting several months ago. It was shortly after the church came out. The first presidency made a statement about the COVID vaccine. Um, and I was like, this is really awkward water to be treading in. And what I ended up deciding was that the church is not in the medical business. The church is not in the political business. The whole purpose of the church is to try to help people make covenants with God that will bring them closer to God and get them to return to God after this life. Make and keep sacred covenants. That is the purpose of the church. And I think what they've discovered is that for those who have a conservative leaning, the church has already gotten everyone that they're going to get. Um, they're not going to get any more of those. Anyone who's conservative and is still not a member of the church, it's going to be a real slow trickle. But right now, there are a lot of people who lean towards the left who haven't made sacred covenants with God. And the church feels like they can still do something about that. This is a theory, completely a Jake Bentley theory here, but that is why they are leaning to the left, is because they're trying to fish in all the water. We're fishers of men. And we're not just going to fish over here. We're going to fish the whole lake because we've caught most of the fish here that are going to get in the net, and we need to try to get some of the fish over here. So frankly, I think that this Respect for Marriage Act is somewhat of a charade because it's not a constitutional amendment. If the Supreme Court ever takes up a case about gay marriage, which this might actually trigger, funny enough, um, if they take that up, they can stack this bill up against the Constitution and say, you know what? The Constitution doesn't say anything about marriage. So that's a states' rights issue. 10th Amendment says so. So the fact that this was never put into the U.S. Constitution tells me that that this bill is somewhat superfluous. But I think that the church got behind it because number one, there are religious protections in there, but also number two, they are trying to cast their nets far and wide. Um, so I thought I'd share my thoughts on that because this was kind of bothering me, and I didn't want anyone blindsided by this because most people aren't into politics the same way I am. So if you're like, if you're debating this bill with some of your friends and you're like, your own church supports it, well, yeah, they do. They want it passed, and the funny thing is their statement is not about support for gay marriage. It is about support for religious liberty and and they say that this is the best way forward. We've already defined marriage, and I've got more thoughts on that, but I try to keep these a little bit short. A little bit short. I've been 11, 12 minutes every time I've done one of these, so I'm going to sign off for now. Maybe I'll do another video on marriage, but probably not. But thanks for watching.